Hi everyone, welcome to iFashi. In today's tutorial, we'll be teaching us how to cut and sew this beautiful wide leg palazzo pant trouser and also how to turn it into a jumpsuit. So feel free to call it a 2-in-1 tutorial. If this is something you're interested in, let's get right into it. Now here is the pattern paper we'll be drafting on, and here is the fabric that we'll be using for this project. We are going to start with the drafting of the pant part of this jumpsuit. So for those that would just want to learn how to draft a palazzo wide leg pant trouser, this first part is for you. But if you want to get to know how we made it as a jumpsuit, feel free to watch till the end of the video. I've gone ahead to mark out the starting line at the top of my paper, and I label it the waistline, where I'll be taking all my measurements from. Now from that waistline, I'm going to come down with 12 inches. This 12 inches is for my crotch length. I divided my hip by 4 and I added 1 inch to get this crotch length. Now from this crotch length, I'll go up by 2 inches to get our hip line. So I'll mark it out and label it the hip line. Now we have the waist, hip and crotch. Next to get out is our knee line. From my waist to my knee is 25 inches and I'll be marking out down 25 inches. I'll roll out the line and label it the knee. Also, I'll try and get out our full length of our pant trouser, which is 46, but I'll be taking 48 for the folding allowance under. So placing my tape on the waist, I'll go down towards the end of my paper to mark out the 48 inches, that is the full length of this pant trouser. I'll roll that line out and label it the full length line. After marking out the full length, we'll go back to the upper part to work on the crotch line. Now on this crotch line, we're going to take our hip measurement divided by 4. My hip measurement divided by 4 is 11, so I'll be putting this 11 on my crotch line, my hip line and my waist line, and then I'll connect it all together with a straight ruler. After connecting it together with a straight ruler, we're going to now take our crotch extension. So to get our crotch extension, for front you divide your hip measurement by 20 and for back you divide by 10. So if I divide my hip measurement by 20 for front, it gives me 2.2. I'll mark out that 2.2 on my crotch line and come out with 0.5 on the hip line and use my curve ruler to connect these lines together upwards towards the straight line going to the waist. For pant trouser, this straight line is our center front, so this straight line is where we'll be taking our measurement inwards from. Now for the waistline, for the waist measurement, I'm going to take my waist divided by 4 and impute it on my waist line. My waist measurement divided by 4 is 7.5. I'll mark that 7.5 and I also add 1 inch for ease allowance. This is for those that would like to take a dart on their trouser. I'll connect that line with my straight ruler downwards to meet the hip line. That will serve as our hip slant. Still on our waistline, we'll come downwards on this center front with 0.5 inch and slant it to meet the other side of the hip. This will bring down the front waistline with 0.5 inch. Then back to this crotch line. You're going to take the measurement on this crotch line from your crotch extension down to the end of your hip. Measure it and check if it aligns with your thigh measurement. My thigh circumference is 26 inches. I measured what I have on my crotch line and it's 13.5, which is very okay. So measure your crotch line to be sure it tallies with your thigh circumference. Now on this same crotch line, we're going to try and get out our crease line, which is the center line that we'll be slanting through. So I'll place my tape on the crotch line, divide what I have there by 2, mark out the midpoint. Down to the knee line, we'll take our knee circumference. In this pant trouser drafting, we're going to get out a straight pant trouser and a palazzo pant trouser from this pattern. So I'm imputing my knee circumference here. I'll connect what I have to meet up with the crotch line using my slight curve. So after marking out that line, I'll now divide what I have on this knee line by 2. so that I can connect it backwards to the midpoint of my crotch for our crease line. The crease line is the middle of our trouser from the dart downwards. Remember those days we used to put gator line? This is the mid line of our trouser. That's what we call crease line. We're going to connect this crease line all the way down. Now I'm going to impute what I have on my knee line on my full length line, or you can also measure yourself to know how wide you want the down part to be. This first measurement is for a straight pants. We are going to get out our palazzo from this pattern as well, like I said before. Now after imputing what I have on my knee line on the full length, I'll divide what I have on my full length by 2 and connect it upwards to meet the crease line coming from the crotch line. Now we have our crease line out. We need to extend this crease line upwards to meet our waistline, because we'll be slanting this trouser all the way to the waist. So on my waist measurement, I divide what I have by 2. You can also use your dart line. If you want to take your dart on your pant trouser, you come inwards from the center front by 4 inches. So that's what I'm marking here. I'll now connect it up to meet my crease line. Now we have that middle line out. When we were taking our waist measurement, if you remember, we added 1 inch to our waist measurement. This is for those that want to take a dart on their trouser. So that 1 inch is what I'm taking out here, 0.5 on both sides, and I'll connect it down. This is for a straight pant trouser. I already said you can get out a pant trouser, a straight pant and a palazzo pant from this pattern. Now this right here is our straight pant. To get our palazzo pant, we'll still follow this measurement, but the difference is from the crotch down to the full length. I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect from my crotch line down to the full length, a straight line from my crotch. So I'll place my ruler on the crotch line and also place it on the full length line and mark a straight line down. The full pattern paper is too long to enter the video. That's why I'm moving it about for you to see how I placed the ruler. Now I'll use my straight ruler to connect another straight line all the way down that will serve as our palazzo pant trouser line that we'll be following. So I'll label out this line now as the palazzo pants, and then the inner line will serve as the straight pants. A palazzo pant does not have any break on the knee, so that's why this line is going straight down. Now we have our crease line out that will be tearing open when we want to cut this our wide leg trouser, because we need to slant this line open to get the wideness we want. Using only this palazzo drafting will not come out as wide as we want this pant to be. So we're going to keep this pattern for future use in case you want to cut out either a straight pant or a palazzo pant. Then we have our front piece out already. Next thing we're going to do now is to introduce our fresh pattern paper that will be drafting the back piece on top. Now for this back pattern, we're going to be placing the front pattern on top of this fresh paper, making sure that you have allowance on the upper part and on the sides as well. So I'm going to use my pin now to pin down this front piece to the back pattern paper that we'll be drafting on. After pinning it down, you can either decide to use your tracing wheel to trace out this front piece on top of the back piece, or use your marker to mark out the line. But first, what I need to do now is to extend. I'll leave my pattern paper pinned on top of this new paper and go ahead and extend the crotch line first. Now for this crotch extension, remember we divided our hip by 20 for front, but we'll be dividing it by 10 for back. So my hip divided by 10 for back will be 4.4. So I'll place this 4.4 on this straight line. Do not start from the end of your crotch line. Start from the straight line outwards. So I'm going to mark out that 4.4 and extend it with my ruler. Now I'll connect it to meet this same 0.5 that we came out with on the hip line before. Placing my curve ruler, be very careful with how you place your curve ruler at this point. However you decide to place your ruler, make sure your connection meets the first connection at the front piece. So I made the first one and it passed where it's supposed to end. So I had to do it again to end with the front line. So this is the line that we'll be using, not this first one. Now after extending our crotch, I'm going to come out with 1 inch on this side all the way down, connect it to the crotch, all the way to the length. I'm coming out with 1 inch from this palazzo straight line, not the line for the straight pants. We are coming out with 1 inch from the palazzo line we made. And then on the other side, the hip line will come out with 0.5. We came out with 1 here. We'll go out with 0.5 on the hip side all the way up. And then I'll connect it with my ruler. After that, we'll work on this waistline. The back waist and the front waist, they are not the same. So what we are going to do is to go up with 2 inches from this waistline. Place your tape on the front waistline. Remember, we slanted the front waistline. Go up with 2 inches, then measure what you have on your waist and take the same thing from that 2 inches downwards to meet the hip side. It's slanted. So you slant your tape because that's where the back waist is going to meet from these 2 inches we went up with. So I'll use my ruler now. After checking the measurement, I'll use my ruler to connect that line. And then on that hip side, remember we are coming out with 0.5 all the way from the down. So make sure this line you are marking from the waist also connects to the 0.5 that we are adding to the back piece. The reason I'm using my tracing wheel here is because this line I marked came out on my front paper. So I raised my pattern paper up and I used my red marker to connect for the back piece so that I don't get confused. The back piece carries the red marker while the front piece carries the purple marker. So now this is the line we'll be cutting the back through. The next thing we're going to do now is to extend this our crease line for the back. So I'll use my tracing wheel to trace out this crease line so that it will show for the back. And for the other lines as well, you can go ahead and use your tracing wheel to trace them out or go ahead and mark them out manually. Now I can now cut out this slant we have on the front. We didn't cut it out before because we needed to get our back first. So I've cut out the slant I have on my waistline for front, and now I'll go ahead and trace out these other lines that I have so that they will reflect on the back, because you don't want the back to be just plain. You will not know which part is hip or knee. So for future references, if you want to use this pattern paper again, just trace out these lines and use your marker to highlight the lines on top of the back piece, and then go ahead and cut out your back piece. Now we have our front piece and our back piece. I'll go ahead and label my back piece. I've highlighted all the lines we have on the front, on the back as well, so that we don't get confused when we want to use this pattern paper next time. What we are going to do for this wide leg pant trouser now is to tear out this crease line, which will be opening to cut our pants on our fabric. But if you're tearing it out, don't tear it off completely. Tear it and stop at the waistline. I'll do the same thing for the back piece as well. I'll stop at the waistline, and before I'll now introduce my fabric that will be cutting on top. At this point, we have our wide leg pant trouser out. The only thing remaining here is to cut your band, join your trouser, you have your wide leg trouser. But we'll go ahead now, place this pattern paper on top of the fabric and cut them out before we'll now do the cutting of the upper part that will be attaching to this trouser that will give us our jumpsuit. Now before we cut, when we place your pattern paper on your fabric, endeavor to pin it down. And then for the width on the under, I'm taking 8 inches. You can use 7 inches, you can use 10 inches. The higher the number, the wider the pant you're going to get. So if you watch the video at the beginning, if you feel like you need your pant to come out wider than the one we made, go ahead and leave out 10 inches or 12 inches spacing in between the hemline of this pant trouser. At this point, also remember to add your 1-inch allowance on the sides. When we were drafting our pattern paper, we did not add sewing allowance. Remember to add your sewing allowance on your fabric, both on the waistline that you'll be using to join to the upper part, or even if it's band you want to join it with. Make sure you leave out allowance that you'll be using to join. And that will be that for the front piece. We'll also do the same thing for the back piece. So I'll introduce my fabric, place my back pattern paper on top, pin it down, and then take the same width measurement you took. You don't want the back to be wider than the front. If you use 10 inches to open up the leg on the down for front, use the same thing for back. Now we have our front and back piece. At this point, you can go ahead and join it together to get your wide leg palazzo pant, or you can go ahead and also make it a jumpsuit like we're going to do. Now, I'll introduce a fresh paper that will be drafting the upper part of this jumpsuit on. On this fresh paper, the first thing we're going to do is to mark out my starting line. The line I'll use as my shoulder line. I'll mark that out and label it shoulder. And the next line I'm going to take is the half length line. We're not taking a lot of that on this top. So I'll go straight to 17.5, which is my half length. I'm taking 18 actually, because I'll need to have extra 0.5 inches for my seam allowance that I'll use to join the upper part to the down part. So I'm marking that line out. I'll rule it out and label the half length. Now we have our half length line and our shoulder line ready. The next two lines I'm going to take is our bust line and our chest line. Those are the only lines we'll be needing for this upper part of this top. So I'm going to mark 10 inches, which is my shoulder to bust point, and then I'll mark 8 inches, which is my shoulder to chest line. The chest line is usually 2 inches upwards from your bust line. So my bust line is 10 inches, which means my chest line will automatically be 8 inches. So I'll rule out those lines and I'll label them the bust line and the chest line. And the next thing I'm going to do is to go to the shoulder line and take my shoulder measurement divided by 2. My shoulder measurement is 16. If you divide 16 by 2, you have 8 inches. So I'll place the 8 inches on the shoulder line. I'll also place that 8 inches on the chest line. Then on the shoulder line, I'll come down by 1 inch, which will serve as my shoulder slope, and I'll connect that 1 inch down to the 8 inches on my chest line. I'll mark out that straight line there. Now on the neckline, which is the shoulder line, I'll take out 3.3 inches for my neck width, and then for the neck depth, I'm using 2.5 inches because this neck is not deep. So I'm going to mark that out and I'll connect from that neck to meet the shoulder line that I marked out earlier. And the next thing I'm going to do after that is to go to that straight line and mark out the midpoint. After marking out the midpoint, on that midpoint I'll come in by 0.5 for our armhole curve. And then to get where you're curving the armhole to on the chest line, you're going to take your bust measurement on that chest line and add 1 inch allowance, and that is where we serve as our armhole curve. And on the bust line too, I'm also taking my bust measurement divided by 4 and then 1 plus 1 inch for my seam allowance. And I'll curve out the armhole curve, and we have drafted the basic bodies that we will need for this upper part of this top. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to go to the half length line, which is the waistline, and take my waist measurement divided by 4. My waist is 30, divided by 4, I have 7.5. So I'll mark out 7.5 and add 1 inch for my seam allowance, and then connect it from the waistline to meet those points I made on the bust line and the chest line. Now, after we're done with that, we're going to come down by 1 inch on this neckline. We are trying to determine the halter neck point of this dress because it's a halter neck. We don't need the shoulder part. I'm going to use my curve ruler to make a connection from the 1 inch I came down with on the neckline to meet my armhole, which means I have a new line going to my armhole, which is the halter neck we'll be using for this dress. Now on this line I made as the outer neckline, I will need to take a dart on the armhole part. For us to know where that dart is coming to, I'll need to take my nipple to nipple measurement on my bust line, only on my bust line, and I'll make a straight connection down to that nipple to nipple measurement. We divided our armhole by 2. We divided what we have there by 2. So it is under that line that I'm taking this dart line. So on this dart line I just marked out, I'm going to take 0.75 on both sides, which will give me 1.5 inches altogether. So 0.75 on the left, 0.75 on the right. I'm using my pencil to mark that out because we'll be cutting off that little dart there to avoid gaping on your shoulder, the halter neck part. So now we've taken out our measurements, the bust measurements, the waist measurements, the neck, the dart on the halter neck. The only thing remaining now is to slash this neck because we have a pleat on the neck part of this dress, as you can see on your screen. So I'm going to slash open this neckline from the neck down to the chest line. So I'm just making a slash and spread there. I'll open it out and cut out on another paper. So first of all, cut this off now. While you are cutting, remember to cut off this dart we have on the halter neckline, coming from the armhole side down to the chest line. I made my tearing down to the bust line where I took the nipple to nipple measurement on that bust line. So after opening it and cutting off the dart, I'll use my sellotape to close it back. This will tighten that halter neck on your chest to avoid gaping on that chest part. So after closing it down, I've cut out the excess paper that I don't need. Now this is how the front looks. The next thing we're going to do is the slash and spread of the neckline to give us the pleats that we have on the neckline of this dress. So I'm going to slash it open and spread it out on this new paper, and then I'll use my marker to trace out the new neck that will be following. When you're tracing out, make sure the armhole part is intact, is well laid on the paper to avoid it adding excess to your fabric. So just tear it open, use your sellotape to spread it open. The wider you spread, the more pleats you will have. Or if you end up having 8 to 9 inches is wide enough. You don't need to overspread it. So just watch what I'm doing. I'm spreading it and taping it down on the new paper, and I'll use my marker to trace out the new armhole and neckline that we'll be using on this dress. And after marking it out, I took my measurements to be sure of what I have. I have 9 inches as my new neck. By the time you know we are cutting this on fold, by the time you open it up, you have 18 inches wide. And when you pleat it together, it will give you that pleat you have on the neckline of the dress. So I'll cut it open now, and this will serve as our new front piece. I'll label it out front piece, and then I'll go ahead and start drafting the back of the upper part of this dress. Here is the pattern paper that we'll be drafting the back piece on. Now, the first thing I'll do on this back pattern paper is to take out 1 inch for my zipper allowance. If you know you use 1.5 or 2 inches for your zipper allowance, kindly take the zipper allowance that works well for you. So I marked out 1 inch and I ruled it out from the beginning of the paper. I went in by 1 inch and I ruled that out for my zipper allowance. And after that, I also take the shoulder line. Remember on the front piece, we also did this. We came down on the upper part and marked out a line that will serve as a shoulder line. Now from that shoulder line, I'll go ahead and take the length, the half length, like we did for front. After taking the half length, I marked out my chest line. This back, I did not mark out the bust line like we did for front. So I only marked out the chest line that we'll be needing because of the armhole. So we have 3 lines on this back: shoulder, chest line, and half length line. So the next thing we'll do now is to take our shoulder measurement on the shoulder line and then take the same measurement on the chest line. And then I'll come down by 1 inch for shoulder slope and I'll connect from that one to meet the point I made on the chest line. So this is basic, but I guess we know this already, but in case we don't, I'm also taking the 3.3 I used for the neck width for the front, and then I came down by 1 inch for the neck depth for the back because the back is not as low as the front. We used 2.5 for front, remember. So now that this is out, we're going to divide this line here by 2 and mark out the middle, and then make a connection to the bust measurement that we'll take on this chest line. Bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 for your same allowance, and then connect it to that half point you made on the line. This will give you your armhole curve for the back. And now on the half length line, I'm taking my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and I'll connect that to meet the armhole point on the chest line. Very, very easy. On the neckline for the back, I'm going to come in by 1 inch and use my curve ruler. Just watch closely what I'm doing to make a curve to the chest line because I want an opening on my back. I want it to have an opening. If you want your zipper to get to the neck, omit this completely. I just want to give my back a little opening there. So I used my curve ruler to do that from the 1 inch I took at the beginning of the neck, and then I added back my allowance because I'll fold it in. So after that, I came to the waistline. On the waistline, I went in from the zipper allowance, beginning of zipper allowance, went in by 0.5. This is because I don't want my zip to be gaping. So I went in by 0.5 and I connected that 0.5 to meet the line I made for the opening on top. So just watch what I cut out, and this is what we have for the back. The remaining thing for this back now is to cut out the halter neck on the shoulder. So like we did for front, we came down by 1 inch to get the point our halter neck will start from, and then we connected it to the armhole. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I came down by 1 inch and I connected it to meet my armhole. So this is the line we'll be following. But for this back, we did not take any darts like we did for front. So the back is ready. Very simple. Here is the back piece and here is the front piece. The back doesn't have any gathers at the neck part, so we did not do any slash and spread. So this is the front and back piece. The next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut. Now before we cut these pieces, remember to cut out your palazzo pants trouser first because that one consumes a lot of fabric. So make sure that one is cut out before you go ahead and cut this upper part. Now I'll just place it on my fabric and cut out. Then this is what we have. I've cut out the front piece on fold and then the back piece, 2 pieces of the back piece as well. And this is the pant trouser. We're going to keep it aside and start working on this upper part. So I'll remove my pattern papers now and we'll start working on this upper part of our jumpsuit. Now after removing my pattern paper, I'm going to place the front piece on the table and I'll place the back piece on top, right sides facing each other, because we're going to go ahead and join these sides first. Join the back to the front on the sides. So I'll use my pins now to hold it down. After holding it down, we'll go ahead and join it in the sewing machine. Now after joining this side, I'll also bias the armhole line up to the shoulder. You know, this is an halter neck, so I'll bias this. After joining this part now, I'll bias this armhole line all the way to the shoulder, and then I'll be right back to show you guys. Then for the pant trouser as well, I'm going to go ahead now and remove the paper. We'll join the front crotch first. We're not joining the back crotch yet because the back crotch will carry the zipper. So that's the part we'll join last. Now I'll place the front piece together, right sides facing each other. I would pin down this crotch so that we'll go to the sewing machine and stitch down this front crotch part. And after stitching this crotch part and the upper part, I'll be right back to show you guys. Here's what we have after stitching the crotch part of the pant trouser. So I'll open it up now and place the back on top of it so that we can go and join it on the sides. Remember I said we are not joining the crotch of the back just yet. I'll just hold it down with a pin so that I can open it up and place it on top of the front piece, right sides facing each other still. So after placing it like this, I'll go ahead and pin down, use my pin to hold down the sides, the two sides, because that's the part we are joining next. Now after holding it down with these pins, I'll go ahead and stitch it down the two sides, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. We've stitched down the two sides of our pant trouser. So the back and front has been stitched together, and then the front crotch has also been stitched, only the back crotch remaining. So now remove the pin and open it out so that we can join the upper part to this down part of our jumpsuit. So this is the upper part. Remember I said we'll hold down the sides, join the back to the front on the sides, and then we'll also bias the armhole all the way to the neck. So I've piped it down with bias, and then I've also joined the sides. The remaining open part on this upper part is the zipper part of the back. So I'm going to take my measurements around the waist of my top, and also take measurements around the waist of my trouser to be sure I have equal measurement. If your own is not equal, ensure they are equal so that when you join it, one will not be bigger than one. As you can see, I have 37 on both the upper part and the down part. So I'll go ahead now and use my pin to hold it down, right sides facing each other, don't forget. I'll hold it down from one end of the waist to the other, and I'll go to the sewing machine and join this waistline. Also, after joining the waistline, I also work on the crotch. Remember, we have not stitched the down part of the crotch part of our trouser. So I'll join the back of the trouser to the front of the trouser on both crotches. I've gone ahead to pin it down. Those are the two things I'll go and do now, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now we've joined our jumpsuit on the waist. The upper part has been joined to the down part, and then we've also worked on the crotch. The crotch has been stitched. Now the remaining thing is this down part. We'll go ahead and fold it later, and then also this upper part. For this upper part, the neckline we're working with is gathers, halter neck gather. So make sure, like I said during the drafting, after gathering with a loose stitch, make sure you still have up to 7.5 inches. And then for this back as well, this back piece that will carry the zipper, remember this curve we have, the opening we have at the back, we'll need to also pipe it with bias like we did for front. Now I'll go to the sewing machine, do the bias and the neck gathers, and I'll be right back to show you guys. Now this is what we have. I've gathered the neckline using my loose stitch, and I've piped this opening at the back with my bias. So the remaining part of the back that is still open now is the part we'll be fixing our zipper. Now as for the front, I used my loose stitch to gather it together, and then I dragged the thread to the desired 7.5 measurement I want. So the next thing I'll do now is to introduce the 2-inch fabric that we'll be using that will be serving as the turtleneck for this jumpsuit. So I have 2 inches fabric on fold, and then I would need 1.5 at the end of the day. You just need to add allowance that you'll be stitching with. So I'll fold it the wrong side out, and I'll fold it into 2 to mark out the mid point. Once we've gotten the midpoint, which will serve as our front, I'll notch it. After notching it now, I'll place it on my table like this and mark out the 7 inches or 7.5 that I have on the neckline. Whatever measurement you have on this neck, measure it to be sure of what you have. I have 7 inches. I'll go ahead and mark from this notched part. I'll mark 3.5 to the left and 3.5 to the right. Altogether, we have 7 inches there where the front neck will be entering. We will not be stitching this part. Then I'll also give a 2-inch allowance spacing, the space that will be in between the front neck and the back neck. So 2 inch on left and 2 inch on the right. After that 2-inch spacing, we'll now mark out the parts where the back piece will be entering. We'll do that on both sides as well. After this 2 inches space we have on this other side, we'll also go ahead and mark out the other part where the second back piece will be entering as well. So now I'll go ahead and stitch this 2-inch space and stitch this other side after the back piece all the way down. But I will not stitch this front and this space we have for front and back. This is what I have after stitching. I did not stitch this space that will be putting the front and the back. I only stitched the other parts of this piece of fabric. So I'll go ahead now, turn it to the right side out and give it a good press. Now after turning it out, when you want to iron, endeavor to fold in what you have at the beginning of this space that will be putting the front and back. Just watch the screen and see how I'm folding it in. You fold it in gently and then iron the other side as well. Also fold in the other space that we left open for the back piece. You fold it in and iron the rest part of the piece of fabric all the way down. Give it a good press so that it will be very neat and flat. Now after ironing it out, we'll open it up and put the front and back neckline into this space that we left for it. With doing it like this, you will now have a very neat front and back neck. All of the joinings we made on the neck will go into this 2-inch fabric that we'll cut out. Hold it down with a pin and this is what you have. The back will be neat, the front will be neat. So I'll go ahead and speed up this video now so we don't waste much time here. I'll iron it all the way down and I'll fix the back neckline into the space that we provided for it. After fixing it in the space it should be, I'll hold it down with a pin and then I'll go to the sewing machine to stitch it neatly. Make sure the stitch you're stitching on this part is very neat because it will be showing on the outside. So the remaining part of the rope can be tied backward, or if you want to put a button, you cut a shorter rope. Now the remaining thing to do here now is to fix our zipper for this back and fold the hemline of the pant trouser, and that will be that for this jumpsuit. Now here's what we have. I've stitched the neckline. Look at what I mean by neat stitching. Make sure your stitch is very neat like this, both back and front. Then we've also fixed our zipper on the zipper allowance, and then for the hemline of the pant trouser, I've gone ahead to use my hemming gum. After stitching it, I used my hemming gum to iron it to be very neat, and we have come to the end of this tutorial. With this tutorial, you just learned how to make a wide leg palazzo pant trouser and also how to turn it to a jumpsuit. So if you were making a wide leg pant, you just put a band on the waist and you've gotten your palazzo pant. For the jumpsuit, we've also gotten how to make it. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Remember to like this video and I'll see you in our next tutorial. Bye.